do we need to wait a second for any reason from a camera standpoint or anything else? Okay. We'll move into the Common Council agenda for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. If you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Here.
Alderman Bushy?
Here.
Alderman Meyer?
Here.
Alderman Hancher?
Here.
Alderman Garrell?
Here.
Alderman Parrish?
Here.
Alderman Schneider? Here. Alderman Nurbin?
Here.
And Mayor Worth.
Here, we've got everybody. The first item of business is a public hearing on ordinance 2020-1578. This amends the city's land use plan map from residential 5 acre to residential 1 1/2 acre for the 9.85 acre parcel located at 8320 West Freistadt Road. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on July 27th, and we had our first reading at the Common Council meeting in August. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing, please?
Move to go into public hearing.
I heard a motion. We heard a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did anyone sign up to speak at the public hearing?
Sorry.
No. So no one signed up to speak. The only people who signed up at this meeting are on one of our first readings. Is that correct? And they've really sent written comments. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second. We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We now will address that same ordinance. Again, it was recommended and we've had a first reading. Is there a, sorry about that.
Recommend approval of ordinance 2020-1578.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Here.
Alderman Hancher?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Parrish?
Aye.
Alderman Schneider? Aye. Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Public officials reports. I have two things to report on. First, I'd like to briefly give a, the city likes to recommend or recognize people who made outstanding efforts, and particularly with public safety matters. The city and its police department and its fire department would like to recognize Mr. Damian Marsall Hills for outstanding efforts, and I should have done this at the last meeting. Several weeks ago, a Mequon man was driving his vehicle home from being serviced. The man suddenly noticed flames coming what he thought was the vehicle behind him and in front of him, but his passenger compartment was filling up with smoke. The man, who's a senior citizen who some of us know well, had trouble exiting his vehicle. Mr. Hills, who was just passing by and notably was not from Mequon, observed that the Mequon man's car was on fire and filled with smoke. He stopped his vehicle, ran through traffic to the vehicle that was in trouble to render aid without any thought for his own welfare. He opened the door, removed the seatbelt from the trapped person, helped him out of the vehicle and out of traffic, removing him from danger. Mr. Hills further stood by with the subject until the incident was resolved. He prevented the man in the car likely from burning up or at least sustaining smoke and fire injuries. He went above what is expected of ordinary citizens going about their day. I think it's good to recognize when people do things like that. I'm sending a letter to Mr. Hills to thank him, but I thought it was worth the public recognition also. He wasn't a Mequon resident, likely knew nobody in the area, but just did the right thing. Secondly, and people on Public Works are aware of this, the Public Works Committee meeting was canceled this evening. There was a mistake in the notice that was published, and people would not have been able to log on to address the two items on the Public Works agenda. Item 7, I think C and D, are resolutions that are in our packet. The city ordinances allow the mayor to interrupt any common council meeting and go into a committee of the whole on any item on the agenda. We also have a requirement that every matter on the agenda be addressed by a committee. Rather than making both items wait until next month, which in one case would be, they're both, in one case it would cause a property owner a considerable amount of money, and frankly, it's a rather routine resolution since we don't have a lot of choice in the matter, since it's required by the development agreement. The other case is a vehicle that we're going to need for plowing this winter. So that's the procedure I'm going to follow for those two items on the agenda, unless the council at the time objects. And then what we'll end up doing is having a special meeting sometime in the next week or two to address those two items. It was the URL for go to meeting is not go to meeting, at least for that department, it's go to meet. And it was accidentally, the ing was typed on, but then there was no way for somebody who wanted to observe the meeting to actually do so. So Public Works couldn't hold their meeting tonight. That's it for my reports. Mr. City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick updates. As the council will recall, staff has been working over the last 6 weeks or so towards developing the framework for the 2021 budget, which will become effective January 1st of next year. As we roll through the process of completing staff's work up to this point, the more public portion of the process will be kicking off next week. And the Common Council will be convening as the Appropriations Committee for 2 workshop meetings beginning next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. That will be a virtual meeting. And we'll have a packet with a whole host of materials going out to the council and being posted on the city website here this Thursday or Friday as materials are assembled and finalized. The second Appropriations Committee workshop will take place the following week on Wednesday, September 23rd, beginning at 7 p.m. That agenda will also be posted on the city website, and that meeting will start at 7 o'clock, again, Wednesday, September 23rd. Thereafter, after obtaining feedback from the council, as each of the departments presents their budgets from 2020 and some of the considerations that will need to be taken into account as we begin to finalize the budget for 2021, the Appropriations Committee will then consider the recommended proposed budget at a meeting that is still yet to be determined during the first week of October. We'll look to finalize that date when the council convenes as the Appropriations Committee next week. Additionally, as was noted in the weekly bulletin that is distributed to both the council and members of the public who subscribe to Mequon's weekly newsletter, the city is on the hunt for additional poll workers for the general election, which will be held this year on November 3rd. Applications are available on the city website or can be obtained by calling the city clerk's office. Training is provided for anyone interested in becoming a new poll worker, and the pay for poll workers on election day is $125. On a related note, relative to the November 3rd general election, the city clerk's office will be mailing out and distributing absentee ballots to those individuals and voters within Mequon that have to date requested an absentee ballot so that they can cast their ballot in the November 3rd election. Anyone who has not yet requested an absentee ballot may do so by visiting www.myvote.wi.gov and registering their information. The city clerk's office has direct access to that web portal and can download that information and distribute a ballot here locally to anyone requesting such. That is my report for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So the next set of items on the agenda is the consent agenda. I would note we're going to pull item 5H from the consent agenda. There's a typing error in it, a correction that was made by the committee that didn't make it into the packet, so we'll address that at the next council meeting. So that leaves 12 sets of minutes to be approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 5A to 5M, excluding 5H?
Move approval.
For a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? No, the ayes have it. We have two first readings. First readings won't be acted upon without a suspension of the rules. And generally that can't occur, and that takes 2/3 majority. It also can't occur unless appropriate. For example, one of the items would require a public hearing, which we haven't had, and appropriate notices. So I don't presume we'll be discussing either one of these items tonight, but the two ordinances are Ordinance 2020-1579. It's an ordinance to amend the zoning code to rezone 3.9 acres of property located at 1310 West Highland Road from single family 1.5 acre to neighborhood commercial with a planned unit development overlay. The ordinance also changes the city's land use plan map. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on July 27th. This is a first reading. There were a couple of people who submitted written comments to the city on that item, and everybody would have received those. There was one person who signed up to speak this evening. I don't know if he's on the line. We certainly do allow people to speak, although next month there is a public hearing on this item and the actual item will be addressed then. I don't know if the gentleman who signed up to speak is on the line. If not, we will move on. The other first reading is ordinance 2020-1580. It's an ordinance amending chapter 10. He thought he might not be on the line, by the way. Ordinance amending chapter 10 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to certain licensing and technical standards within the city's electrical code. Public welfare, did you take action on this evening?
Yes, we did. And sorry about that. Let me get to it here real quick. Yes, we did, and it passed 3-0.
Okay, then this is also a first reading. So the next item on the agenda is the Committee of the Whole. This is our future of our fire department committee report. So we'll go into Committee of the Whole to discuss that. My understanding is that there is a member of the committee, Ms. Lynn Streeter, who on behalf of the committee is making a presentation. Before she gets going, I'm sure everybody realizes Alderman Meyer has chaired that committee. Alderman Schneider has also sat on that committee, and we have 3 hardworking members of the public, as well as a member of the Fire and Ambulance Association and Deputy Chief Zelmer, who have all been working for many months on this. And this might not be the end. I'm not sure. We'll find that out. But we thought that it was important to get a report from the committee on the efforts they have made. So, Ms. Streeter.
I think I can get a little help here from the Deputy Chief, who's got our presentation document.
Justin, I think, are you ready for that?
Yep, Kurt, working on pulling it up.
Okay.
So while Kurt pulls it up, let me take a moment and I will introduce myself, because although I know some of you, I certainly don't know everyone who's in front of me right now. My name is Lynn Streeter. My husband and I have lived in Mequon for about 30 years. I have had the privilege of serving this community in healthcare for over 40 years and currently serve as the Executive Director of Strategic Planning for Froedtert Health in the Medical College of Wisconsin. It has been my privilege to serve on this committee and to be here with other committee members who I will draw on tonight as we enter into discussion and share with you the journey that we've been on. If I could have the next slide, please. So let me first begin to introduce you. Alderman Mayer has chaired our committee, and the committee has worked diligently for a long time. Melissa Bladehorn has served our committee as a community member and is here with us this evening. Kirsten Hildebrand has served our committee. Rick Lemke is unable to be with us tonight. He is a volunteer member of our fire department, serves our community well, has participated in every meeting, and has been a true advocate for the fire department in the committee. Alderman Kathleen Schneider is with us this evening, and Deputy Chief Kurt Zellman. The chief has joined us at every meeting and been a resource and a guide for us during our work. Next slide, please. So let's begin with introducing you to the mission, as the committee really needed to ground itself in what its purpose is. This committee was charged by our mayor to examine ways to optimize the future viability of the Mequon's paid on-call fire and ambulance service, to understand where we are, to understand those forces that are both driving and restraining us right now, and make recommendations for the future. Mequon has successfully maintained a paid on-call fire department with very dedicated fire and ambulance personnel. However, we need to understand the difficulties that Mequon and many paid on-call and volunteer fire departments around this country have in attracting and retaining members. And it's imperative that we begin planning both for an interim period of time and a longer time horizon to be able to serve this community and ensure its success. Next slide, please. We will talk to you a little bit because I think it's important to understand what we have been on. And I would consider this, and I would describe this for you as really a learning journey. This committee entered into the process knowing that we needed to begin with learning. We needed to understand how the fire department has evolved. We needed to understand its current state. We needed to look not only inside of ourselves, but we needed to look more broadly at a regional and at a national level. So for 14 months, we had meetings, discussion, and studied. We studied many documents that you will see are referenced for you in your report. We looked at the matrix staffing study that you're probably all familiar with. We looked at your annual reports. We looked at data. We looked at response times. We looked at pay structures. We looked at what was happening in Mequon, what was happening in other fire departments in southeastern Wisconsin. We looked at national trends. We looked at national research. Then we came back and we looked at the demographics and we studied this community. We studied this community to both understand the community that we serve, as well as the community we need to draw from to staff and support our fire department. Now, when I look at this bottom set of bullets, it says conducted in-person interviews and toured the fire statements. But those two little bullets are really an understatement about what we did. So in my world, in my background, it would be like saying we were going to have a focus group and invite anyone to come who wanted to come. The number of firefighters, EMS, paramedics that came was absolutely staggering. I was impressed with the level of participation, which is an indicator of the level of support that we have within this community. And they came and they literally spent hours and hours openly and honestly sharing with us. And what they shared were their observations. They shared with us extremely honestly where they saw the strengths of the fire departments and where their concerns were. They were articulate in laying out their risks, but probably the most impressive to me, and we took lots of notes and we gathered lots of information, was the message is incredibly clear, particularly maybe from a bit of an outside set of eyes, that the level of engagement that we have is tremendous, and it's something to be proud of. The other thing that was incredibly clear is the amount of mutual respect between the command staff and the rank and file wove through every conversation. The collaboration, the mutual support is, in this fire department, a strength and an opportunity. I don't know that one little slide conveys that, but that was clearly a 14-month experience. So let's move on and let's understand the current staffing of the fire department today. If I could have the next slide. So today you have a chief and you have a deputy chief. Those are your 2 full-time employees. You have about 50 paid on-call fire members, but we've got to dig a little deeper to understand that, because within that pool of 50, there are about 12. There is a core group of about 12 that staff 80% of your call hours. In and of itself, that creates a risk. 6 members are needed for an EMS schedule 24/7. 2 first responders, the paid on-premises paramedic at Station 2, paid on-call EMT to respond to Station 2, and 2 paid on-call EMTs to respond to Station 1. Available members respond to fire calls, but there is no schedule. So again, we look at strengths, but we look at risk. Next slide, please. So what did we learn? We learned that within the fire department, there were staffing issues, and those issues create a risk to the community. Our report and our recommendation is all going to be about how do we mediate that risk. So let's begin to understand them. We know that there have been challenges with insufficient EMS and fire staffing. We know that we have struggled where there are unfilled shifts in both ambulance and first responder schedules. When we have a small group of people, as dedicated and as passionate and as hardworking as they are, that are taking the majority of the shifts, we have a fragile and more vulnerable system. You know far better than I that you needed to work through a 2019 Memorandum of Understanding to ensure that we could temporarily fill those shifts. You know you needed to work through an additional MOU in 2020. So it helps us understand that today you have some tremendous strengths in the people you have, but we have some vulnerabilities. So let's move forward. Next slide, please. We asked the question, now that we have an understanding of what's happening in Mequon, let's dig deeper into those challenges and let's understand how do we compare to other fire departments locally and across the country. And so here's what we learned. The challenges for a paid on-call fire department is absolutely not unique to the city of Mequon. So what we need to understand is the challenges are about the challenges for this model within the context of our demographics. So nationwide, there is a changing nature of fire departments to provide more EMS services. And you will see in the reports that we've shown you that the percentage of calls for EMS are what has gone up significantly. Increased call volume both day and night across our nation. Increased training requirements and continuing education. True in the fire department, true in many, many professions, but it is the reality of a challenge and a need for today. We also know in this employment climate that is much more challenging today for an employer to release an employee during a workday in an unscheduled way to respond to an emergency. That's part of our reality. And it is challenging to come up with pay scales and salary ranges that can be competitive and maintain these departments. We are not in a unique position. We're in a position that's shared from others, so we learn from others as we go along this journey. So now let's layer on that national picture to some of the challenges that Mequon is facing. We have fewer residents in that age cohort of 20 to 35 years of age. So as we look at the age of our fire department, we do have fire department members that are getting older. As we have younger members, we have to be able to recruit them and retain them. We have more and more individuals who are working longer hours, putting to court to support themselves and their families with less time available for volunteer work. We know for every employer in every sector that more and more employees, as they struggle for work-life balance, are really being very careful about their discretionary time. Also lay on to this a community with high housing costs. We need our first responders in our community. We need them here and able to respond. So somehow where we're struggling to recruit younger people with high housing costs in a demographic where our population is aging, we have some real challenges. We also know that the kinds of positions that individuals may be looking for are certainly available in neighboring community as full-time and part-time paid positions. That's the context in which we have to solve the problem. So let's move on to the next slide. Our committee laid out and evaluated 4 different options. We laid out an option of maintaining the status quo. We understand that you're pursuing an option, and we support that, of looking into the opportunity to consolidate with other local fire departments. We evaluated the option of converting to a full-time career staff fire department. And finally, we evaluated an option that would strengthen the current combination structure and in essence continue with what we have today in our community, and that is a hybrid model. So let's walk you through our thought process. Maintaining the status quo. Well, it's not going to surprise anybody from what we've said so far this evening that doing nothing is really not a very viable option. We have too many uncovered or understaffed shifts. MOUs are used as stopgap measures, and I can't imagine that's a path anyone would want to continue. But most importantly, the structure is too fragile. There are too few people doing too much, and what that creates for this community is a risk. So let's look at the next option. Consolidation with other fire departments. So the city has communicated public policy forum that we're currently engaged in, talking to other communities looking at opportunities to collaborate, looking at opportunities to consolidate. What might that look like? And you're on that journey of studying that option. It allows for some sharing of resources. It may have benefits in terms of recruitment and retention, but it's probably not a short-term solution. It's probably a solution that will take time to evaluate, to explore, to implement. And so this committee supports the effort to do it, but really doesn't believe that's your solution for today and right now. So let's move on. Implementing a full-time fire department. Switching to a full-time fire department would solve many, but maybe not all of our problems. Switching to a full-time fire department says we have our personnel in stations, and we know if they're there and they're on site, that it will improve our response time. And certainly that's a metrics we care about. We know that we would have tighter schedule, we would have more control, and so it lends itself to a certain reliability, and it allows us to improve some performance and reduce some risk. But we really tried to look at this very holistically, and we recognized fully that the impact of a full-time fire department is a very significant cost. There are also some challenges. You would end up with a full-time fire department of potentially having a smaller group of responders, who are paid to work that day, paid to work that shift, to be there, because it is only those who are on duty who will respond. That will challenge us in situations where we have multiple calls that can occur and do occur at one time. And we'd need to continue certainly to rely on mutual aid for other municipalities. An option, but not the only one we explored. So let's move on. Strengthening the current structure, or what we've sort of come to talk about, is a hybrid model. And this is the recommendation of your citizen committee for today. We bring this forward and we fully acknowledge this may not be your long-term solution, but it is a very viable solution today to give us greater stability and greater service. So let's talk about what it means. Hybrid means we have a model that is a hybrid of paid on call, volunteer staff. We have a hybrid of positions. And so our recommendation is that we strengthen the current situation with 3 actions. So let's talk about what does it mean to say we're going to hire 3 additional paramedic deputy chiefs. And let's break it down. First of all, what it's saying is we're adding 3 additional FTEs right there. 3 additional FTEs is a far cry from a fully employed fire department. So if we're going to have a lower number of FTEs, our challenge has to be to maximize the flexibility of those positions. What we heard from the rank and file on those nights that we sat in the fire department is, you need to give us on-site supervision. We are here in 2 locations, 24/7. We are outgoing. We need on-site supervision. We need people who help us with training and recruitment. We need supervision as we're bringing on newer EMTs and newer firefighters. So a couple of things to understand. These 3 positions would be paramedics. We're not just adding leadership. We are adding paramedics. We are adding paramedics that would help fill schedules And we are adding supervisors who, although could each focus on an area of need identified, they have to be flexible in their role and interchangeable in their ability to supervise 24/7 wherever they needed to be. You have to have flexibility if we're not going to do a full-time fire department. So within that, then, we talk about, and you'll see job descriptions included in the packet, 3 roles that respond to gaps that were identified that we have today, and we'll talk more about that. We're also recommending that you add 1 paid on-premises ENT position to staff Station 1. We don't have that today. We have 1 paid on-premises EMT position to staff Station 2. This gives us 24/7 coverage at each location. And again, this is all about mitigation of the risk, have coverage, be prepared, be able to respond, and do it in a hybrid way, a far more cost-effective strategy than a full-time fire department would be today. And finally, we recommend we take those MOUs and we say, it's time to make them permanent, commit to a competitive rate that will allow you to recruit and retain. We can't put effort into recruiting and not be able to retain. So let's talk a little bit more about those roles. We'll go on to the next slide. So we talked about the deputy chiefs providing that 24-hour supervision. We talked about that as a retention strategy and a recruitment strategy to have that coordination all of the time. In addition, as we dug deeper and we did our interviews and we toured, we identified some roles that you have that are critical that today we do when we have time, when there's a gap, because between the chief and the deputy chief, not all of this can occur right now. We don't have the bandwidth to do it. EMS supervisor. What we heard is a desire for EMS supervision to ensure our EMS operational readiness and provide daily supervision to that part of our workforce. A training supervisor. There is such pride in the level of training that we have in this fire department. It is tremendous. But in order to recruit and train, we need to be able to coordinate that as somebody's area of focus. And then finally, an area that we not only understand the need for, but we've identified a growing utilization of this role locally and across the country. And I will share with you, I've had some experience with it in my freighter role in other communities. And that is one related to fire prevention, fire inspection, community education, community awareness. There are places in neighboring communities and across the nation where fire departments are partnering with health system to find ways to reduce risk, to reduce injuries, to keep people safer. And so what is our role in being able to go out and do inspections of our new growth, our new development in this community and ensure they're safe? So those are not 3 different jobs. Those are 3 paramedics who would be deputy chiefs, who would provide supervision 24/7 in a flexible way, with each being able to have a focus area to meet a need that we have today. Next slide, please. I won't go through this in any detail. You are all probably far more familiar with the emergency MOUs and the pay practices that you have needed to put in place. But we want to get away from putting a Band-Aid on the bleeding. And so instead, we make these things permanent and we are able to recruit much more successfully and be more competitive with our surrounding communities. And we have to retain. We can't invest in recruitment, invest in training, invest in education, and not be able to retrain. Next slide. Paid on premises position. So to be clear, this isn't a person. This is 24/7 coverage that would give us an EMS firefighter located at Station 1 on Buntrock. We don't have that today. We want to make sure that we can provide stable staffing for the west side of the city. So one of our challenges is the amount of geography that we need to cover. And so we want to make sure our two bases, Station 1 and Station 2, are stable. And so we do that with that paid on the premises position. We believe that that will be a great recruiting tool. And again, it's one more step in that hybrid model to create stability. It also allows for someone to be there to take on some of those activities that assure that constant state of operational readiness that we're looking for. Next slide. So the committee worked very closely with the chief. You've got this information in the material that came out. I think the chief was very thoughtful in really putting together a financial cost to the proposal that we allow you to look at for your consideration to understand what does it mean to take this incremental step in strengthening a hybrid department. So I leave that up there for you. Certainly if there are additional questions about it when we get into discussion, the chief is available to help us as well. And I certainly would defer to him on any budgetary reasons. Next slide. Rationale. So what we're going to say tonight is a full-time fire department that is a full-time paid fire department may be the inevitable long-term solution. Long-term, it may be what we need to do, but we believe that there is a more fiscally conservative step that moves us in the right direction, that help build additional strength within the department, but decreases our risk and creates a much more stable system. The other piece that this model does is it allows us to retain all of the current firefighters and EMTs and paramedics that volunteer for us today. We don't want to lose that group of individuals that we told you are highly engaged, highly committed, dedicated to this community. And should we throw the switch at this point in time to a full paid fire department, we lose most of that talent, most of that experience, and most of that dedication. So this is an incremental strategy, and it retains that knowledge and experience. It provides a viable solution, while at the same time the city can explore other options. It provides a viable solution while you continue to think about a longer term strategic and financial plan for the fire department. And so that becomes the basis of our saying, we think we've done a deep dive. We think we've done our homework. Probably most importantly, we have looked at the quantitative data and the qualitative data. of all of the information that's been shared with us. We've reviewed our options and we believe it's a strong option. Last slide, please. And so this is our first report. We're not done yet. Our work isn't over. The future of the Fire Department Committee is going to continue to work. We want to continue to look at long-term needs, and we think it's responsible for us to evaluate facilities and equipment and continue on that journey. We made the decision to break this into 2 reports because we believe in terms of the risk that exists today and the vulnerability that exists today, it's in staffing. And so we come forward tonight with a staffing report, knowing that we will come back at a future time and give you an update and a recommendation and an assessment on facilities and equipment. So I'm going to pause there. Many of the other members of the committee are here, and I turn it back to you.
Mayor, you gotta put your mic on.
You didn't hear everything I said? Thank you, Ms. Streeter. That was a very thorough and well done presentation. It put the written report that we got into context, and it was helpful. So I guess I would first see if there's any questions from the committee of the whole for the committee members, or any other discussion, or anything that any of the committee. Alderman Schneider, sorry, I didn't see your hand up. And
No,
Alderman
I just
Pearson.
wanted, this isn't so much a question, but I just want to emphasize, because I did receive a concern from a citizen that we were hiring a bunch of bureaucrats and we needed more boots on the ground, so to speak, that these deputy chiefs that we're referring to would be staffing the ambulance. So they would be going on the runs with the other EMTs. They'll be providing supervision in real time, hands-on, not reviewing reports the next day to see what they did, but they will be providing care to our community at a high level. These people will all be paramedics. So we will be, I think, really increasing the quality of our department by adding a paramedic and also adding supervision. We are recruiting vigorously, but many of our recruits are a little bit different than we had decades ago. They tend to be younger people who are either exploring a medical career or looking to get a full-time job with a fire department. So we're having a higher turnover of these young folks than we once did. And it's really important that we have supervision and mentoring and training of these newer members to hold our quality of care.
Thank you. Alderman Parrish, I think your hand was raised.
Yeah, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you to Ms. Streeter and the committee. My only question for right now is it common to find paramedics with these skill sets of training and inspections? They seem like really unique specializations to be able to actually fill these roles with these objectives.
I wonder if the chief or the deputy chief could speak to that.
Can't hear you.
You've
Although
got
I
to-
see,
How about that?
there you go.
I'm confident that we can find people that could fill all those roles, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Anything that any of the other members of the future of our fire department committee would like to add? Alderman Strelczyk.
I had questions similar to Alderman. When you see adding 3 deputy chiefs for that dollar amount, we're having problems filling shifts. So you added, from what I'm seeing, a very expensive management, working management, you know, thank you for making sure they're working management to a problem that needs addressing. I mean, I agree with you, you need more budget. I agree with you, you need more people. I asked the same thing when the deputy chief came on, do we need to add a chief? It's been a very good move. It's been a very smooth for the city. But I'll ask the same thing, you know, the third time, you know, deputy chief, I went online and just Googled a couple, you know, fire department, hierarchy, chain of command, you know, things like that. Why aren't we like bringing somebody in as maybe a level or a captain level or something where they have supervisory skills, but it's not at $120,000 a year position on our taxpayers' shoulders. Because today, you know, we're going to have the same discussion later that we need to fill this. So if the solution guarantees those shifts are filled, I'll find a way to be supportive of it. If it's just adding a layer of management, you lose me in the support here, but gain it later somewhere else to make sure that we have those shifts filled. So it's a questioning and a concern. And if the chiefs could please address it. I mean, I have the utmost respect for what you're doing in the city, and I know that you're on, you know, every day you walk out, you're on thin ice. I mean, it's just, you've got a fragile department. So I respect what you're doing, but I just have those general questions.
Alderman Meyer, were you going to address that, or?
Well, what I'd like to do this evening is maybe if the other members of the common council that have questions on the report itself, and I think the validity of adding this type of dollars to the budget, we're planning on having and during our budget workshop, we could be bringing up those types of questions on that for it. I think it'd be a little more appropriate at that time, but we can discuss dollars now if everybody wants to. But I think that if everybody can, you know, put their questions to the report itself, or how do we get to some conclusions, or that, and then kind of let this all soak in. Well, we gave a lot of information tonight, and then discuss budgetary situations with that at a later date.
Well,
But
except that Alderman Strelchek's question wasn't solely a budgetary question. It was, why are they chiefs instead of lieutenants or captains or some other, I don't know what the, you know, ensigns. Oh yeah, we don't have that in the fire department. I'm not sure I understand all the labels, but why chiefs?
Well, the chief or the deputy chief can tell me if I'm incorrect on this, but what we're doing is we're looking at a top-down approach on this, and what we're doing is that by having 3 chiefs, and it really doesn't, I mean, the titles aren't really as important as it is the jobs that they're doing, and that they're at the top level of the one of the top levels in the department, so that our personnel can look up to them for their instruction, can look up there for their training. And you know, there's a lot of the things that they came up when we were talking to rank and file, and we've got a lot of good people, but they're looking for people to give them direction when they're on call. And we have we have 2 very good people on the force right now. We have a limited amount of people that can handle all the calls and doing that on a consistent basis for it. Another thing is that, you know, if you're looking at a top-down approach inside that, we can, as the chief said, we can fill those positions with that. A lot of people who are on a lower level just below that, you know, they leave us to get those types of positions. And we might be able to find somebody that's in our own rank and file to do that, or we hire people from outside to do that. But I don't think that you're going to be seeing a lot of the people that we'll be able to get. Those people that we hired, they'll be here, they'll be maintaining. We won't have to look for more people than to fill those positions as being paramedics, which is highly important, highly sought for. I don't know if that answers your question.
Alderman Carroll, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I listened pretty intently on this, and and thought it was an excellent presentation to start with. And looking at it, there's certain things the government's supposed to provide that are absolutely necessities. And one of those is safety and protection from the police department. Another one is the fire department. Another one is the roadways. We spend a lot of money on a lot of things that are not necessary, but police, fire, and roadways are necessary. And I think that the way this presentation was put together, it was extremely efficient the way they have it designed. They looked at all the different options. I'm very comfortable with it. Sometimes it's not something you want to actually scrimp on and say, well, we can't have this, or why are there, I know management, I know business, I know this isn't a top just add some more administrators like you get in the school system all the time, where you have just as many administrators as you do teachers. That's not the way this is situated. So I thought the presentation was outstanding. I think that the money spent on it is going to be well spent. And I think that the way the job market is today, you don't want to train people just so somebody else can take them away from you at a higher wage. Spend a lot of money on training and on education and to getting these people up to speed, and then they get paid $10 an hour more somewhere else, or $5 an hour more somewhere else. They got the training, they'll go. So I thought it was an excellent presentation. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the time, I'm not going to scoff at spending the money on something that government should be providing, and that's one of the essential services.
Deputy Chief Zillman, did I explain that top-down approach okay?
Me, you did.
Deputy Chief?
Or Chief.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Alderman Mayor, yes, I mean, you did a very good job explaining the top-down approach. A number of other fire departments in these areas have tried the bottom-up approach, and we've learned that it simply doesn't work. An organization our size has difficulty competing. We hire a line-level firefighter or an entry-level person. We put a bunch of time and effort into training them, and yet in our organization, there's a big gap between where they are when they start and where they can go. We don't have paid captains and lieutenants positions, so they have nowhere to go once they're a line firefighter. And that's what the other fire departments have seen, is that they hire an individual, they're there 6, 8, 9 months, and then Milwaukee hires, North Shore hires, West Dallas hires, and those people leave, and the organization just starts all over again with that same battle of now management time, spending time hiring the next new person instead of moving the organization forward. If we can steal higher level employees from those departments and retain them, that's the better investment in our eyes, is that we're bringing in people that are highly qualified and are now they're with a management position, and we're going to keep them much easier than the entry level person. That it's just going to be a continual revolving door.
But to follow up on that, I think Alderman Strelchek's question wasn't about an entry level person, but simply a question of one step down. I don't know what that is, captain or and can you leave your people mute until it's somebody else talking? Thank you. A captain or some other, just short of being a chief. Does the concern still exist there?
The reason I chose deputy chiefs for that position are twofold. One is we want the best qualified people coming here, and a higher level position at a higher wage is going to bring us much better people than something at a lower wage. Also, if we have a union, and anything below a deputy chief would actually be in the union, and then we get into overtime issues and other stuff that perhaps would complicate the whole process. If the desire is to maintain a paid-on-call department for a long time, we need to support it. We've built a nice framework for it, and now all we need is the wheels and the chain to make the bicycle go.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Well, we will be having we'll be addressing safety services on September 23rd. Am I correct, Will? So that will be when we start to take the recommendations from this report and start looking at whether and what we can do for the 2021 budget. So I really want to thank the committee. I look forward to your future work. I trust that it will be as quality as this is. Recognize we've done some paid studies of equipment and facilities, so we don't need to recreate the wheel there, but maybe we need to dust it off and move forward. So thank you very much. It was quite enlightening, and your report was good, and certainly we'll be discussing it more in a couple of weeks. So if there's nothing else on the future of our fire department report, we will leave the committee of the whole and proceed with the rest of our agenda for this evening. The next item is resolution 3762, and this is a resolution. Yes.
Sorry, were we going to stay in committee of the whole for the 2 public works items?
No, we'll just do them when we get to them. We'll go in and out.
Okay.
It's easy. Let's just stick to the agenda. Resolution 3762, a resolution extending the city's declared public health emergency. This was, what did public welfare do with this evening?
Public welfare voted on it for approval at 2-1, and I recommend approval of this. Make a motion to approve.
All right, so we have we received the recommendation, and Alderman Meyer is making a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Alderman Boucher.
Good opportunity, since I was the one, to make mention as to why I was the one. And that is, in looking at the proclamations and history, I feel very strongly about proclamations 2 and 4 as being something that is necessary going forward. But at the same time, I also feel very strongly that as part of our legislative duty, and this is not a comment on the mayor and the proclamation powers, but I feel as though we've had a point raised in the past, and I would like to see the proclamation process proceed if there's any additional future proclamations being in the order of a recommendation being made, and then the committee meets to decides on it prior to the proclamation becoming enforced, as opposed to post. So that was
Alderman Boucher, that's what we did. I could have issued a proclamation number 6 extending the date, which I did not do. Instead, we submitted a resolution to the Public Welfare Committee to discuss, and now having it come to the council. So I guess I'm not sure I follow your comment, since I didn't issue an additional proclamation.
And that is correct. And this is back to Glenn here speaking, and that is a good process, and I would just like to see that well done and formalized as part of our procedure going forward.
Well, but the change in our ordinances and state law isn't before us today. Somebody can make a proposal to do that, and certainly public welfare can address it to the extent that the city has the authority to limit the mayor's ability to issue proclamations. That is certainly a separate issue that can be addressed through an ordinance change. But right now, certainly under our ordinances, I had the authority to issue the first 5 proclamations. I also believe under state law I do. But what's before us tonight is an amendment amending the current deadline, in part to allow us to proceed with the proclamations that were approved by this council, numbers 2, 3, and 4. Other comments? Alderman Garrow.
I agree. I mean, we should 2, 3, and 4. but the wording on this again, and when I'm looking at the wording on page 182, it says, the attached resolution provides for the extension of the public health emergency through March 21st, 2021. It goes on to say, if the attached resolution is approved, the Common Council by resolution or by mayor proclamation can extend or terminate the public health emergency if deemed necessary at a future date. And what it reads to me is that the mayor could make a proclamation and it didn't need to be approved by the Common Council to extend the date. And my problem with that is you watch the politics across this country, which is just disgusting today. The country is being torn apart. You have some areas where the mayors are making proclamations and they just because they have the power to. And I look at that and I say, you know, that's not Mequon. I don't want that in Mequon, but the way it's written is it says that the mayor may do it or the Common Council may do it, but I'd like to see it just like before and again, I go on to one of the other places where it reads in here on page 185, 1A, it says the period of the declared public health emergency is extended by a subsequent declaration by the mayor or person in charge pursuant to the order of succession in the Code of Ordinances, or the Common Council by resolution. I'd really like to see this. We're probably going to agree with anything that the mayor does, but I don't want to give up I want to give up absolute power that the mayor can do something without Common Council approval. And the way these are written, it looks to me that that's the way they're written. The mayor can do it, or the Common Council can do it, but if the mayor does it, it's just done. So it actually gives the mayor the same power as the Common Council. I like to see this written in such a way or changed in such a way, and maybe the city attorney can do this, where it says, okay, the mayor makes a proclamation, we're probably going to agree with it, and then we, get together, we can get together like this, and then approve it. But I just don't want to take the risk of giving up absolute power as I see what everything else that went on in the country that I never expected would happen 6 months ago, but I see happening today. So I'd never take a risk that I don't have to take, and I don't think we need to take this risk. So if there's some way you could write it so that, all right, Mr. Mayor, I trust you, you make the proclamation, and then we just turn around and say, okay, we agree with it.
I believe state statute requires that, but I turn to Mr. Zajac to describe that. I believe the statute requires anytime the mayor has a proclamation that it has to be submitted to the Common Council for approval, and that's why the 5 of them that were done all came to the Common Council for approval. And frankly, I didn't see a reason for, I could have done that as what you just described, Mr. Alderman Garrell, and done this by proclamation and then had the Common Council confirm it. But I decided, why do that? We had time here. There was no immediate emergency, therefore submit it to the council and have the council discuss it. So Alderman Zajac, I didn't want to demote you. Mr. City Attorney, doesn't any proclamation by the mayor have to, unlike in some other states, unlike what the governor thinks his authority is, I think anything I proclaim has to be submitted to the Common Council for ratification.
That's correct. In fact, the statute, as I recall, even includes language that says that it's supposed to happen fairly promptly as well. I don't remember the exact language, and I can look it up if anybody needs it. But it is a requirement that any proclamation does go to the council for ratification.
I mean, you could amend it and take out that number 1. I still think I have that ability under state statute anyhow, but I'm not utilizing it because, frankly, I think we ought to be collaborative. And if the 8 of you said, or actually 5 of you said, no, we're not going to extend it, we're not going to extend it. I mean, I could have done it backwards to make sure I stepped ahead. Alderman Garrell.
Yeah, my problem is the wording in it. The way it's worded is that this looks like we're doing a proclamation that now gives you the authority, okay, that at your discretion, if you feel so, that you can extend this. We won't have the ability then at that time, if you decide to extend it, to say, well, we don't want it extended, or we should have a vote on that, because this proclamation actually gives you that authority. The way I read it, it gives you that authority to do that. And
Okay, how about if we add I propose an amendment that says, as extended by the mayor or the person in charge, comma, with prompt subsequent common council ratification.
Perfect. That'd be perfect.
So that's you proposing an amendment?
Yes, that's the amendment, exactly that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the amendment itself? Excuse me, Mr. Jones.
Just
You're
a quick question of clarification for the city attorney. Would that amendment apply to subparagraphs A and B under section 1?
Well, the other is to terminate. Do you care if I terminate it? Because if I terminate it, you can always come back and add it. But you can add that in anyhow. I think I have the right to terminate the proclamation that I made anytime, but I haven't done that.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we take a vote and put it in
Good
writing.
question. Alderman Garrell, since you're the movant, does it need to be under both subparagraphs?
I like to see it in number 1, number 8 in A, and then I'd also like to see it in on page 182 at the bottom where it says the tax resolution provides. Those two areas, just those two statements in there should be and approved by the common council, instead of
the one is the memo. I don't know that we amend a memo because it has no authority. It's the resolution that has the authority. I mean, we're all agreeing, if we agree to this amendment, that effectively that's the impact. But on the memo itself, we never amend a memo. When you reject the resolution, you don't, or amend the resolution, we don't amend the memo. By the way, there's an error in the memo. It says March 21st, and the actual date in the resolution is March 15th.
Yes, we'll just amend the resolution on the resolution.
So the amendment is in the first paragraph where extension. Any other discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Any further discussion on the resolution as amended? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye. I had a question, but
Oh, Alderman Boucher, we'll hold off on the roll. Alderman Boucher.
it was just a quick question as far as something you stated. So if hypothetically we had a discussion, would we be able to have, when would be the next time we'd be able to have a discussion on, let's say, Proclamation 3 about in-person meetings? When would that be an available discussion point?
At the next Public Welfare Committee, if the Public Welfare Committee takes it up, or any other committee wants to take that up, we then can have a discussion and it can come to the council at that point. That really is not before us, Resolution 3, at all.
No,
or
I'm
Proclamation
trying
3.
to process it.
But we can address that anytime somebody wants to offer an amendment or a termination of Proclamation 3. And it goes through a committee and comes to the council. I offered an amendment to it once already. We can discuss amending it again or terminating. So anything else? Back to the roll call, please.
Alderman Bushy,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrell,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye. Aye.
And Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
That resolution passes. The next item is Resolution 3763, a resolution amending the city's annual fee schedule for fiscal years 20 and 21 in connection with the establishment of a specialty care transport fee. This was recommended to you by the Finance Personnel Committee this evening. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
And Alderman Bushy.
The next item is Resolution 3764. This is to purchase a 2021 Chevy 3500 with a work cab and chassis, dump body, and snow removal equipment. Public Works did what with this? Public Works did not meet, so we're going to initially go into a committee of the whole to make a recommendation to the council. Does anybody want to make a motion from the committee of the whole?
Recommend approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second
Any
it.
discussion or questions? Hearing none, since we're in a committee, we don't have to have a roll call. We will at council. All in favor of recommending this to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
We will now we'll go back to the council. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. I'm assuming we have no discussion since there was none a minute ago. Please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher. Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye. Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
That passes. With the echo, it sounded like Alderman Garrell voted twice. This isn't Chicago. You can't do that. The next item is Resolution 3765. This is to accept the partial dedication of public improvements and authorize reimbursement for specific improvements in accordance with the development agreement for the Town Center Master Plan Unit Mixed-Use Development for Foxtown Center. We did not have a Public Works Committee. We will take this up as a committee as a whole. Is there a motion to approve?
Approval for Resolution 3765.
Or recommend? Second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of recommending this to the council, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Now we will go back to the council and we need a motion to approve the resolution.
I move the motion.
A second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion now? Hearing none, please call Alderman Parrish.
Yeah, well, I'm in favor of this motion, and we're actually approving the public portion of the road improvements. I just wanted to say that whenever any developers come forth in the future for their portion, for their on-site portion, that they're verifying that their value that they're promising us is still in place. This is more and more of a concern of mine, given commercial market conditions. So any distributions of TIF money, before we do so, I think we need some validation that they're supportive of the value that they're going to be assessed. So just more of a general comment, not for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Although they're obligated under their agreement for that value. So please call the roll.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Durbin,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
The ayes have it. I'm going to pass the gavel to Alderman President Nurbin for a minute. I'll be right back, but since the next two should be relatively straightforward, I need a 2-minute break. I'll be right back.
All right, I think that brings us to Resolution 3766, resolution for approving purchase of a fire department first responder vehicle. I think this is pretty straightforward. Does the chief want to give a brief description of events here? Well, back on August 13th, our vehicle was involved in an accident. It was totaled out. The insurance company gave us $25,000. A new one, all the parts and accessories was 40, whatever. Out of pocket cost is 16,000 for the city. It was due to be replaced in 2 years, so we've been setting money aside to replace it in 2 years anyways. Thank you. Did Public Safety make a recommendation earlier this evening?
Yes, the Public Safety Committee recommends, and I move approval.
A
Okay,
second.
is there a motion, a second? Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nervin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
And Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
That motion passes. Next item is Resolution 3767, resolution authorizing the exemption of 10654 North Cedarburg Road from Mequon annual sanitary sewer tax. And it looks like the mayor's back. Would he like the gavel back?
I'll finish talking.
Oh, I was just finished.
Well, this was recommended by the Sewer Utility District Committee tonight. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval of resolution 3767.
There's a second? We have a motion and a second. Since we already discussed this to the extent discussion was necessary, please call the roll.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nervin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
And Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The next item of this on the agenda is the personnel evaluation. This is a potential closed session. Personnel evaluation of the city administrator. The Common Council may convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985 1C to consider the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. We then could convene an open session to take such action as deemed appropriate, but I do not anticipate that we will. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Nervin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
And Mayor Worth.
Aye. So we won't be coming back into open session. At